Hey, everybody. It's our first official podcast episode.
Woo! Hello, hello. We are so excited.
We are so excited. Let it be documented that it is 5 p.m. and we got together today at noon to start recording this episode. We've just been tinkering all day long, but we're ready.
Here we are. We made it. We made it. That's what matters. We have learned how to put all sorts of equipment together and all technology things. So we made it.
Don't ask us any questions about it, but we made it.
So welcome everyone. We are really just truly so excited that you're here and to kick off the Your Body Has Your Back podcast with our first episode. So before we dive into our first episode, we wanted to just take a couple minutes to tell you a little bit about the structure of the podcast and really what to expect so you can get the most out of it. The first 7 episodes were really intentionally designed to walk you through all of the important foundational aspects of supporting a healthy gut and balanced hormones. So our hope is that when you listen to these initial episodes in order, you can use this information to build a strong and supportive foundation with your nutrition and lifestyle. I kind of want to do that over because I was over reading it.
I would just start it again.
Okay. Yeah. Just start talking.
I would just start it like welcome.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. Welcome. We are just truly so excited that you're here and to kick off the Your Body Has Your Back podcast with our first episode. So before we dive into our first episode, we wanted to take a couple minutes just to tell you a little bit about the structure of the podcast and really what to expect so you can get the most out of it. The first 7 episodes were really kind of intentionally designed to walk you through all of the important foundational aspects of supporting a healthy gut and balanced hormones. Our hope is really that you'll listen to these initial episodes in order and you can use this information to take action and to really build a strong and supportive foundation with your nutrition and lifestyle. And I want to preface this by saying, Abby and I are definitely practitioners that love to dive deep and to really nerd out over all things health and nutrition. And we will absolutely be taking you into the weeds with us in future episodes to discuss a lot of different health-related topics. But it is so important that you cover the fundamentals first. Both Abby and I have worked with truly, cumulatively, thousands of clients. Abby and I have really worked with thousands of clients one-on-one in our practices, and we have seen firsthand just how stressful it is for people to navigate their health in our modern world. There is so much conflicting, confusing, and just kind of piecey, fragmented information out there. And we often see people just overlooking the important basics. And often this leads to implementing diet and lifestyle interventions that are actually contributing to gut and hormone issues and making people's symptoms worse. So it's really our mission for you to be able to use this podcast to support your gut, to support your hormones, and to improve your overall health. And that's going to start with the foundation. Now, you might be wondering if gut health, starting again, Will. So you might be wondering if a gut health and hormone podcast hosted by 2 functional dietitians is just going to be a big conversation about poop and periods all day. And while Abby and I both could definitely talk about those things endlessly, gut health and hormones impact a lot, and they impact a lot more than digestion and periods in the menstrual cycle. So when I'm talking about gut health and hormones, all right, I'm going to redo this again because I want to say we. Sorry.
Oh, no, that makes sense though.
Okay. Now, you might be wondering if a gut health and hormone podcast hosted by 2 functional dietitians is just going to be a big conversation about poop and periods. And while both Abby and I could definitely talk about both of these things endlessly, and we will be talking about them a lot in all honesty, gut health and hormones impact a lot. They impact a lot more than digestion and the menstrual cycle. We are talking about sleep, energy, mood, skin, metabolism, and so much more. Because gut health and hormones, this is your holistic health. And we'll be diving into how to support all of these things throughout the podcast. And we'll be diving into how to support all of these things throughout the podcast. Woohoo!
So today we're diving into what you didn't know you needed for optimal gut health and hormone health. A title and subject matter we specifically chose to start with because so many of our clients come to us not practicing or even realizing that these aspects we are about to dive into are the very things that are preventing them from finally healing their gut and their hormones. So, in other words, today is going to be all about not overlooking the importance of living the fundamentals. Jillian and I have had countless conversations about everything from over martinis to coffee in reality, talking about how important and impactful the fundamentals actually are in our client healing journeys and how these fundamental strategies are often what we see being drastically overlooked in the functional medicine space and glaringly ignored in the conventional medicine space. This might not be the sexiest or most exciting of topics. Even calling them fundamental makes it feel like we're having a 101 level discussion. But I promise you that these are the most important fundamental foundational steps to ensure that you are actually doing. And if you are not doing these, you won't see full healing in your body. And I'm going to say that louder for the people in the back. If you bypass the fundamentals, you are not going to heal your gut and your hormones. So here's what you need to know. Jilly, you want to kick it off with your favorite topic?
Yes. You have me feeling all fired up now with that. So the first thing you didn't know, you needed to know that is, oh, oh my gosh, I keep messing this up.
You're
Sorry.
fine.
It's weird to like redo it when you're not like in the moment.
Oh,
you know
totally.
what I mean? Okay. I forget.
So Jilly, you want to kick it off with your favorite topic?
Yes. Oh my gosh, you got me all fired up with that. So the first thing you didn't know, you needed to know is that you need to be eating enough and you need to be nourishing your body adequately on a basic level in order to heal your gut and hormones. And if you're not eating enough daily, this is going to put a tremendous amount of stress on the body. Our bodies truly are hardwired for survival. And when energy is scarce, even in a low grade sense, the body is going to respond and it's going to adapt by trying to conserve resources and really ultimately, making changes to be able to protect you. So when I say under eating, I feel like there's probably, lots of eye rolls and things like that out there, but I cannot emphasize this enough. And Abby and I put this point first for a reason. If you are underfueling, you're undernourishing, this can lead to things like a sluggish thyroid and a sluggish metabolism. And, that's going to lead to things like weight gain, hair loss, constipation, low production of sex hormones, which is going to impact things like menstrual cycles and fertility. If we don't have enough energy, we certainly can't, expect ourselves to, if we don't, oh my gosh. Okay, going back to the fertility. If we aren't eating enough, how can we expect ourselves to have great energy? So we're going to feel, low energy, fatigued, and really just so much more. So on a basic level, we really just need to make sure that we're eating enough, we're nourishing the body well. So something else I just want to mention is that if we are under eating, again, even just in that low grade sense, this essentially does put your body into an active stress response. It is stressful on the body and it can lead to, nutrient deficiencies, all sorts of things. And we just can't expect our bodies to function optimally when we don't have enough of the basic things that it needs, like fuel and energy, to run properly.
So is this something that you see only in your clients who are actively trying to restrict calories intake? Maybe they have had a history of an eating disorder or an active eating disorder. Or do you actually also see this in clients who might subconsciously or unintentionally be under eating?
Oh, I love that question. I think this is just such an important one. So I see both, truly. I see the intentional under eating where people are, really trying to restrict and limit calories and energy intake. But in practice, I really actually see a lot of unintentional under eating. So this low grade under eating where people are actually totally unaware that they're underfueling their bodies. And it's and they may be experiencing all of these different symptoms. And I think the knee-jerk reaction is to maybe, blame different foods, right? Versus thinking about, oh, am I taking in enough food on a basic level? And am I giving my body enough nourishment? So again, the under eating, even when it is intentional, it is such a stressor on the body, and it will lead to dysfunction with the gut and digestion and hormones.
So what are some of the specific gut and hormone symptoms that someone might be experiencing if they're under eating, undernourishing themselves?
So some of the biggest things I see with women in practice is a lot of anxiety. So again, if we're under eating, we're often in that active stress response. We've activated the stress response system, and we have, can experience heightened anxiety, a lot of irritability and shifts with mood. And we can kind of feel like we're just, riding a roller coaster. I will also see a lot of sleep disruption. So that's a big one, particularly, trouble falling asleep or waking in the early hours of the morning. I'll also see a lot of skin issues, acne being a big one, and often that, kind of cystic jawline acne when the body is just like really in a active stress response. And then constipation. So that is a huge one. And I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that one, Abby, and kind of how you see this present. But, I definitely see a lot of women dealing with chronic constipation, and they're just simply not eating enough.
It's so common. We're going to hit on this point in just a moment too.
So it's super, super common. And those are some of the outward symptoms. I mean, there's really so many things you could look for to get a sense of if someone was under eating. But those are kind of some of the major symptoms. And, what I also want to give you guys just in terms of, thinking about under eating is maybe a little bit of a general guideline for how to assess if you are under eating or not. We are absolutely going to dive into this topic in terms of, just how to fuel your body optimally with more specifics in future episodes. But I want to just leave you with a little bit of a guideline here as a starting point. So we feel strongly that if you are a grown-ass woman, you're living, you're breathing, and you're participating in just basic day-to-day life, your caloric needs are going to be way more than 1,500 calories a day. I use this 1,500 calorie benchmark because I cannot tell you how many clients we work with that come to us on 1,200, 1,300, 1,500 calorie diets, and they've been on these diets for really prolonged periods of time. And it is just not enough fuel for a grown-ass woman. And, most adult women are really going to need more than 2,000 calories per day. So just to kind of put that into perspective, and it might give you the ability to, do a little pulse check and get a sense of, if you are kind of significantly under eating or not. Of course, there's a lot of nuance when it comes to an individual's, caloric needs and macronutrient needs. So there's, kind of lots of specifics there to kind of tease through if you're calculating your own needs, which again, we'll do an entire episode on. But that's a good kind of starting point if you suspect you might be under eating.
So important. All right. The second point of our what you didn't know that you needed to know is a major blind spot to healing that we often see is that how your mindset is medicine. Our mindset is so important. It might feel more woo-woo, or it might feel kind of intangible to think about mindset being so much of an important part of this kind of healing journey, but it is really so important. So the first thing to think about is really focusing on the process and not the outcome. So a big barrier that we often see in so many of our clients is the focus on the big goals, the focus on the big things that they want to achieve, that they want to shift in their health. And we're all for it. Let's make some big goals, but we're missing the forest for the trees. We're missing the small wins that show us that we're moving in the right direction and that keep us committed to that healing journey. So we really don't want to lose those forests for the trees. And I'll tell you, a client in my NDD program this week is about 2 months into the program and still having some challenges with loose stools. That's his big goal. He wants to really heal his gut because he has more chronic loose stools. And we're getting there. We've had some improvements, but we're not 100%. And he was getting frustrated. So we had him refill out a symptom tracker that we use every month. And what he found was that he actually hadn't had zero eczema flares, hives, or itchy skin, which was a constant for him for the last 10 years of his life. He hasn't had any of that for the past month. So even though we are still in pursuit of his big goal, when we looked at the smaller steps, the smaller wins, and the communication that we were getting from his body, he actually went from feeling frustrated to feeling super excited and really recommitting to this process, to the things that he's doing for himself, and really knowing that the healing is there. It takes some patience and it takes some commitment. So also really realizing that comparison mode is something that in our modern connected world, we really only get people's highlight reels. So we're often inundated with people who have achieved the big goals, but we don't get to see the details of what led them to their big goals. And we're comparing ourselves with our raw human experience version of ourselves, which can be, nitty gritty and maybe not so glamorous, with somebody else's highlight reel. And when we do that, we're always going to feel less than. We can all understand that. So, really focusing on just ourselves. So a personal share, my highlight reel would be that, I've healed chronic fatigue and chronic constipation, and I feel amazing in my body at this moment, and I'm at the tail end of my healing journey. But that's my highlight reel. So what you wouldn't know from that highlight reel is that I've been on a 15-year healing journey. And that's really where that nitty-gritty raw human experience is totally getting lost in translation. So we really want to realize that there is an unglamorous side of this raw human experience, and we can really only compare ourselves to ourselves. And with that, even, we still need to be gentle.
I love that you bring in that kind of personal experience, Abby. And I feel like it's the idea of like not comparing your day one with someone else's day 100, day 300, or 15 years, right? And, I think people really need to hear that, because we only are seeing people's highlight reels. And, a lot of the small wins that you talked about too can just sort of get overshadowed when, we're just fixated on, what other people are doing and the big wins that people are achieving. So I love that. And I think it's just such an important thing to think about in terms of taking things at your own pace and not comparing to other people.
Yes, absolutely. And another point that actually Jilly has really helped to give me some wonderful vocab about in our work together is starting with body neutrality. So allowing ourselves to, we talk a lot about like love yourself and love your body. And we want to hold space for many of us that are on a healing journey might be in a place where feeling love for our body might feel really challenging. And then it's, a lot of that kind of self-talk of, well, if I don't even love myself, yada, yada, all those things. So can we find neutrality where we acknowledge a desire, where we want to achieve the big goals of healing, our gut, our hormones, our body. We want to feel amazing in our body. We want all of those. But it can be challenging to jump right to that love for your body when you feel so foreign in it. So instead of trying to cannonball into the deep end of the pool, can we think about starting in the shallow end of the pool and working to find neutrality or peace at where we're at? So then, as that shift will happen, when we start to gradually work on the fundamentals and we start to move into the middle of the pool, the deeper end of the pool, by focusing on the foundation, the process, the small everyday steps of nourishing our body versus obsessing over that outcome. It's really that kind of patience. So today, tomorrow, and all the days forward, really aiming to commit to respecting, caring, and acknowledging that you are doing the work to lead to those bigger goals over time.
So important. And I think also just normalizing the fact that everyone has bad body image days, or, days that things don't feel as good from a symptom perspective. And I think those are the times where it, the world of body positivity can feel really polarizing if you're not there yet. So I love kind of the approachableness of neutrality in terms of like, okay, maybe I don't feel my best in my body, or I'm not having a great day with some of these symptoms, but I can choose neutrality and I can choose to show up for myself, when it's hard. So a question that I have for you, which I know is a loaded question, but how does someone start in terms of changing their mindset to focus on the process and some of these things that you're talking about? Like if there's a listener right now who's all of this is resonating with them and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm like, the mindset stuff is the big thing for me right now. It's the big, kind of barrier. So where could someone maybe start?
I think starting with the reality of allowing ourselves to really absorb that we're not going to bully our body into healing faster. That is a reality. And I think we can all agree that the more we bully our body, it's not going to make the healing process any faster. And it's certainly not going to make us feel more in love with our body. It's probably going to do the very opposite. So allowing ourselves to just start with awareness. So start by pausing to create awareness about why are we doing this? Why are we showing up, choosing to nourish our body, choosing to listen to this podcast, to focus on the fundamentals, to do these things? So what are the deeper reasons that we're making maybe the changes that we're making, or even thinking about the changes that we might make? What would it feel like to be in a healed body? How would you show up differently in a healed body? Or really that why are we looking for the big goals? And realizing that healing is an intentional choice, and it's really a choice that we're making every day through the small steps that we are making. And that piece of allowing ourselves, to Jilly's point, of like, this too shall pass. Some of the challenges of having flares and symptoms, having rough body image days, having days where we feel fatigued, where we don't feel ourselves, where we feel foreign in our bodies, allowing ourselves to hold space, that there is a part of that is part of the human experience. And those opportunities are actually more opportunities to commit to the fundamentals, to commit to nourishing yourself, hydrating yourself, sleep routines, all of the things that we're going to dive into to help to give you more of those tools. And really choosing to adopt those supportive and nourishment-based approaches versus that deprivation, that restriction, because that can be tempting. We have a bad day, we think, oh my gosh, I'm just going to almost go back to my operating system that's stuck in that restriction mode, because it must be that I'm doing too much of something, that I need to take things away. I have to take foods away. I have to restrict. I have to do these things that sometimes this modern world, this media world around us, makes us think that less is actually going to be more. When really we want to be focusing on what we're inviting in, such as the foods you are eating, the rest you are taking, the support that you have around you in the community, or the providers, or the programs, the things that are helping you to plug more into you and that healing experience. And then really aiming to move from a place of gratitude or a place of love for yourself first. Maybe even just that place of neutrality is where we're starting. I like to call this finding your cocoa love. So that idea of gratitude, it connects with me, but it didn't like hit like, ooh, like that real feeling of like hit home. And so through conversations with friends and colleagues and things, I really started to try to embody that feeling of love and gratitude and think about what brings that out in me. And I have a baby niece who I am obsessed with. Her name is Coco. And when I think about Coco, I just like feel this like warm fuzziness in the center of my chest. And I'm just obsessed with that little girl. And that is my Coco love. And so I'm going to move from when I think about Coco, I feel that love, and I'm just going to allow that to be what radiates out, where my actions are towards others, towards myself. So finding it maybe not through your own feelings of yourself, but maybe finding it through something that you do feel that way about. At least that's the way that I came around it. So find your Coco love.
I love that. And while you were talking about your Coco love, I was thinking to myself, what or who sort of gives me that deep feeling of, gratitude and love. And it's embarrassing thinking about my dog, Mowgli, who we call Momo. So it's my Momo love. And my Momo love is, feel that very deeply. And my husband's probably listening to this like, oh, wow, great. You mentioned the dog. And here I am. But I love that as a way to really think about how to feel that in your body. What Abby's describing too, I think something important to point out is that it's a practice. It's a practice. Some days will feel easier than others. But when you kind of stick with the mindset stuff, it does get easier, but it's a process. It's a practice. And I think, both Abby and I have been through all the mindset things with our own healing journeys, which you'll learn more about at some future episodes, in business, in all things. So the mindset stuff is so important, and you just, described it really well. But But yeah, so I'm going to chat about number 3, the third thing that we feel you absolutely need to know in terms of, supporting your gut health and hormones. And this is light exposure. I have to preface this by saying both Abby and I are a little bit obsessed with talking about light exposure.
Obsessed.
Obsessed, which sounds, kind of silly and simple at first, like, okay, that's weird. But light exposure is so, so important. And when I'm talking about light exposure, ultimately, I'm really talking about circadian rhythms. And, this is a meaty topic in itself, but I really just want to speak to the light exposure piece of this. So in terms of just, I guess, in general, what circadian rhythms are. So circadian rhythms, if you're not familiar, are essentially these physical, mental, behavioral changes that follow roughly a 24-hour cycle. And so the term circadian rhythm, it's basically like describing the schedule that all of our internal processes are kind of operating on. So circadian rhythms make sure that we're producing hormones at the right time to help us fall asleep, that we're producing, digestive secretions and, hormones that are helpful for, digestion and breaking down food when we're eating, producing neurotransmitters, things that are helping our mood and energy. So, something needs to direct these things and tell everything in the body, when to happen. So there's a few specific things that regulate or control circadian rhythms, and light exposure is one of the biggest things. So when we are exposed to light, the, kind of clock in our brain and clocks, throughout our body, on our cells and organs, are stimulated by light, or they are, on the other end of the spectrum, stimulated by not seeing any light, so seeing dark. And this kind of, sends signals to, all the areas in the body to do what it needs to do. So in our modern society, light exposure is declining. And a lot of us work, desk jobs, we're inside a lot. We're on screens a lot. So we're exposed to artificial blue light versus actual, natural sunlight. And there's a lot of research in this area coming out that's finding that disruptions to circadian rhythms, meaning, altered light and dark exposure, is actually driving a lot of significant health issues. And we used to kind of think about light exposure and circadian rhythms really only in relation to like the sleep-wake cycle. But now we know that it's so huge in relation to the gut and hormones and all things. So, it sounds silly, but, both Abby and I have conversations about the fact that, we've worked with clients who come to us with really, gnarly gut symptoms, lots of, period hormone related symptoms. And they are doing everything with food. So they've tried all the things. They're actually doing, well with the foundational things. Really they're exhausting the options with food and really even stressing themselves out trying to dig deeper with food. And then we find out that they never see the light of day, right? So they're waking up in the morning, rolling out of bed and looking at their phone, and then they're hopping into their work chair and, on the computer all day. And then they're going from the computer to the iPad, then to the, TV, and then they're on the phone in bed, and then we rinse and repeat. And there's, little to no natural sunlight exposure. And this is having a huge, huge impact on people, like we said, because it's just, the brain, the body, it's not getting the, sort of external signals that it needs to be able to, operate properly. So circadian rhythms are a big deal.
Such a big deal. So I guess, when you say light exposure or sun, like, does it need to be sunny and a clear blue sky day in order for me to get the benefits, or in order for someone to get the benefits of light exposure?
So it actually doesn't. And even on cloudy, overcast days, it is still worth getting outside, getting, exposure, because you are still absorbing some of that, into your eyes. You want to make sure you don't have sunglasses on or anything like that. But you are still getting that absorbed directly into your eye. You're stimulating the clock in your brain. And you just need to be outside a little bit longer, newer evidence is finding. So the goal would be maybe, 20, 25 minutes, of exposure on a really cloudy day. If it's super sunny, 10, 15 minutes is adequate for, getting that sunlight, that we need to support circadian rhythm alignment.
Amazing. So where would someone, are we on this point yet? Did we skip over the benefits of sunlight and lack of sunlight? Optimal sleep, energy.
Oh yeah. I kind of touched on that, aggressively early, probably.
No, I think that I just didn't know if you wanted. I was like, did I go her?
Did we? I kind of touched on it a little bit.
I think you could probably highlight just like the list again. Because I feel like
Yeah, and maybe even just be like, okay, so you mentioned a few things, but what specifically is
So we've heard a couple things about the benefits of light exposure, circadian rhythm, but can you give us like the laundry list? Because I feel like it's pretty robust and it's pretty impressive. So what's the laundry list of the benefits of sunlight and really getting that natural light exposure?
Yeah. So really when it comes to sunlight and, circadian rhythm alignment, so this is basically making sure that I approached this wrong. I'm going to start over. So light exposure, circadian rhythms, the big things that are being regulated or impacted by, sunlight and circadian rhythms are going to be definitely the sleep-wake cycle, like I mentioned. So if we are not getting sunlight during the day, it's going to be more challenging to fall asleep easily, to stay asleep, to get good quality sleep, since the sunlight is actually what is stimulating the production of hormones and different things that are needed for that. Energy on a basic level. So feeling energized throughout the day. And getting up with energy. So that's a big one we'll often see with clients is, just low energy, specifically having a lot of trouble getting out of bed. Bowel movements. So bowel movements are, regulated by circadian rhythms as well, and just digestion in general. So if there's lots of disruptions to circadian rhythms because, light and dark exposure is altered, we'll see wonky bowel movements and, issues there. Fertility actually is impacted by light exposure, circadian rhythms, and then mood imbalances and mood disorders. That's also a big area where we do have a lot of research on as well.
So where would someone start to help to realign their circadian rhythm?
So I think the best kind of easiest and most impactful way to start would be light exposure first thing in the morning. So when you wake up in the morning, ideally, I usually recommend within about the first hour of waking, if possible, getting outside and aiming for, 10, 15 minutes of sunlight exposure. If you have more time, awesome, let's grab more. If you have less time, let's still do it. It's beneficial even if we, can't get out there for a long period of time. But basically that light exposure first thing in the morning is what basically stimulates something called a cortisol awakening response. So this cortisol awakening response helps the body to produce cortisol first thing, which is going to give us energy. It supports immune function. And that light exposure, like I mentioned, is what is going to actually influence hormones that are produced way later in the day when we're trying to sleep. So just start there, get outside, get that sunlight, even as a starting point, if you have like room darkening shades or something like that, your alarm goes off, roll out of bed, rip open the shades, get any sunlight you can in, or, if your room is really dark, maybe you kind of roll out of bed and sit in a comfy chair that has a lot of light near a window. And then maybe you get outside a little bit later. But I would say first thing in the morning is the place to start. And then from there, I would recommend midday light exposure. Sometime, maybe lunchtime, tacking on a little walk, or maybe even eating lunch outside if you're able to. Those would be the places I would start.
And if you follow Jilly or I on Instagram, you already know that we are obsessed with our morning walks and midday walks and just walking in general, I think, really all to get light exposure.
100%. And it's funny too, because Abby and I, we both live in Boston, but we live on different sides of Boston. So Abby lives, south and I live north. But we both do a walk on the water. And if we had binoculars, we could actually probably see each other from across the ocean, the harbor there, which is really funny.
We've tried it. So bringing us into our point number 4, which is pooping daily. And we have to have a bowel movement. We have to poop every day. I'm going to say that louder: every day. Not every other day, not every 2 days. We need a fully voided, complete feeling bowel movement every day. And no, we are not shy about talking about poop. It's a safe place for poop talk here. And it's going to happen. So, a bowel movement is a major area where we can see a very clear example of the interconnectedness between gut and hormones. So let me explain. Your daily bowel movement is how we balance hormones. A daily bowel movement is how we take out the hormonal trash, which is a very important part of our hormonal health, our hormonal balance, and the expression of hormones in the body. A bowel movement is actually part of our detoxification system. So detoxification is a big word to explain how our body packages up waste from the body to remove it. So this waste includes hormones that we no longer need anymore. So the body packages them to get them out, and we excrete those through the stool. So if we are not having a complete elimination of stool, of poop daily, we are going to reabsorb our hormonal trash as a protective mechanism for the colon, because that's an organ that if that waste sits around in the colon for a long time, we don't want to damage the colon. So the body's brilliant and it will reabsorb it. But what happens if we're doing that countless day in and day out, day after day, or chronically long term, we are going to see imbalances in our hormones and other waste products in the body. So the other waste that we excrete through stool, well, certainly hormonal trash, which is most specifically estrogen, but we do have other hormone byproducts that we excrete through the stool. Environmental trash, such as chemicals or irritants from our environment, and there's a lot of them, as well as metabolic trash, which are byproducts from just normal functions of living in the body, such as dead cells. Interesting little fun fact that you would actually have a bowel movement if you stopped eating entirely. There is still enough waste products from our body, like dead cells and functions of daily metabolism that need to be excreted, that we would still have a bowel movement. Obviously, not recommended that we try that for just an kind of exploration, but really fascinating.
So fascinating. And, I think, oftentimes, obviously everyone poops, some more than others. But we often, I think, just think about poop as, we're, breaking down, digesting our food. And that's what's coming out. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think there's, not really a lot of connecting the dots in terms of, this is a really important, detoxification elimination pathway. So I love that you kind of point out all of these key pieces. And I feel like you could keep this list going in terms of, why regular bowel movements are so important, but it's huge.
And we're going to dive into this topic in much more detail in a later episode, because it is near and dear to both of our hearts, in particular mine, my personal journey. So this also does bring up the importance of recognizing some short-term tools for long-term healing. So that might mean if this topic really hits home for you, aka you are not someone that's having a complete bowel movement every day, it might be necessary to invite in some additional strategies to get your gut emptying as a first step to allow for your body to optimally detox by taking out the trash and to better balance your hormones, and then doing the deeper work to heal the root cause reason why the gut isn't emptying in the first place. So that's really what Jillian and I do every day with our clients, is helping to prioritize what needs to come first in a healing journey. And that's sometimes where some of these strategies and supplements even can be helpful.
So if someone is listening to this right now and they're kind of in the trenches of a healing journey, or, maybe they're just hearing for the first time that like, oh my gosh, I should be having, 1 to 3 bowel movements daily. And I'm only going every 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, whatever it is. What are some things that people could potentially do in a more immediate sense to support regular bowel movements while they're diving into understanding why they're not having bowel movements and the longer term healing?
Yeah. Well, to come back to our first point is eating enough. So we need optimal caloric intake for the body to function. So without enough caloric intake, our adrenals, which are aka our stress organs, our thyroid, and our gut won't function properly. The body won't function properly. Again, to the discussion we had at the start of this podcast. So eating enough also ensures that we have enough physical bulk in the gut or digestive system for the muscles to push against to move the stool out of the system. So it's really basic in function, but it's a muscular movement that pushes a bowel movement through the gut and out of the body. So we need that bulk. That's what fiber is. It goes in one end and goes out the other, but it's the exercise for the muscles. And there's a connection to the brain that's happening. So then we're bringing in the patterning of the circadian rhythm and cortisol. So it's a really beautiful, intricate kind of orchestra of things that are happening, but we need those fundamentals to be in place. And eating enough is a major one that I see, Jilly sees in practice all the time. And I know it can be uncomfortable when someone's chronically constipated to say, you want me to eat more? It's not even leaving my body. You must be bananas. When really, it's a vicious cycle that we have to break. And so slow and steady, we start to increase the bulk of food. We make some key food choices, which we're going to get to in a second. And we can see the body starting to take those little baby steps with patience to really start to heal itself.
And I think, kind of tying it back to the eating enough piece and just, thinking about everything we're highlighting today as a whole, it kind of just speaks to the idea of, what we're talking about around, kind of diving into these like deeper interventions before the foundations are being supported. And we see often people just wasting a lot of time, a lot of, finances and different things on interventions that their body, could be helpful in the right context, but in the context of being underfueled, not gonna move the needle.
Yeah. It's so important. So also to the second point, ensuring that you're properly hydrated, which includes water and mineral intake. So generally, we want to be aiming for half of our body weight in ounces of water daily. So that's the water constituent to it. But we also need to be emphasizing mineral intake. And we're going to talk about this much more. So I just want to go into this really briefly, but minerals are the compounds in our body that tell the water where to go. They really are what help to optimally hydrate and have optimal muscular function and communication in the body. So minerals include potassium, sodium, and magnesium are kind of 3 big hitters. And those can be found in things like coconut water, mineral-rich salt like Redmond's Real Salt, as well as their products that we can use like Elementi electrolyte packets, Jigsaw's adrenal cocktail, Seeking Health optimal electrolytes. So those are powders that you can mix into water to make sure that we're getting them. We use those a ton in practice with our clients. We use those a ton in practice ourselves. We're a bit, again, talk about things that we're obsessed with. Minerals are high up on that list.
As we look at the countertop that we're recording this podcast at, that is just full of beverages and packets of minerals and all the things.
So point 3, when we're thinking about supporting daily bowel movements, are key foods to promote motility and regular bowel movements. So the first is ginger. Ginger is what we like to call a prokinetic, or something that helps the gut to contract, the gut to mobilize the muscles to actually move food down and out. So ginger in a food form, ginger in a beverage form, ginger in teas, ginger in any form is really amazing for bowel movements. Interestingly enough, kiwis with the skin in particular, I know it's weird, it's fuzzy, just do it. They are really supportive for constipation. A kiwi a day keeps you pooping, I guess would be the new saying that we're going to say. I tried to come up with something
keeps the GI doc away.
There we go. And then the last are soluble fiber foods. So these are also the category that we geek out on. So some of my favorite sources of soluble fiber for constipation are chia seeds, ground flax seeds, and root vegetables. So those are things like sweet potatoes, carrots, beets, parsnips. Soluble fiber makes that like gelatinous goo kind of substance in our gut, which really helps to create like a little slip and slide and some exercise for those muscles, but keep things moving. So our fourth area of support is actually talking about a supplement. So magnesium citrate or magnesium glycinate. So a magnesium supplement. So we want to think about this when nutrition and lifestyle interventions are not powerful enough. So you've done everything that we've talked about above for the start of the episode, the last kind of 3 points that we just highlighted. And we're at the point that things are still not moving. Now we can really think about utilizing a magnesium supplement that can help to relax the muscles in the colon, gently pull some water in, and create an easy to pass formed stool. So the forms that you want to be using to help to relax those muscles and kind of be gentle on the body would be a magnesium glycinate or a magnesium citrate. So we do want to look for those specifically in order to have this effect. And you might need to gradually increase the dose to find the high enough dose where you're actually producing a bowel movement, but not too high that you're getting loose stools. So little light bulb moment, if you're utilizing this and you're taking magnesium and you're getting loose stools, decrease the dose. It's too high. And so those are just the quick and dirty points for kind of remedying constipation. We are going to dive into this again in much more depth in a future episode. So stay tuned because it's a very common challenge. You're not alone. We can help you.
And that brings us to our last need to know tip for what you didn't know you need to know to support your gut health and healthy hormones. And that is that supplements are the cherry on top. Supplements are not foundational. So I want to preface this by saying Abby and I are both practitioners that really utilize supplements a lot in practice with clients, truly. And we use them in a variety of ways. So we may use them in the way that Abby just described in terms of, as a tool to get more immediate relief with a symptom or to open up, an elimination pathway, while we do, deeper investigative work and, kind of just deeper work in general for, supporting the body. We will use, supplements for, filling in dietary holes and, repleting nutrients that maybe we're not getting enough of. And then we'll also use supplements to address specific dynamics alongside diet and lifestyle tools to really bring the body back to balance. So a variety of ways that supplements can be used. And we really truly believe in the power of supplements as a piece of the puzzle. Supplements are not going to do the trick alone. And if we have to rely on these things long term, we're missing the mark. We're missing the point here. So we really just want to emphasize that supplements can be an important piece of the puzzle. They can really help move the needle, but it absolutely needs to be alongside diet and lifestyle therapies. And it has to be on top of a strong supportive foundation. And it's just really, really important to hear that because I think, supplements are something that are a little bit more sexy and exciting. And it feels like, oh, I could take this pill and, I'll feel so much better. Again, these can be an important piece of the puzzle, but we always want to look to the foundations, look to the basics, and not overemphasize the supplements on, a gut or hormone healing journey and just make sure we are aware that they're one small piece.
Yeah, and this is really a major point near and dear to our hearts because we do see in the functional medicine world the overlooking of the fundamentals and the reliance on supplements as the magic bullet. So, kind of just the translation of conventional medicine and medication to functional medicine and supplements. So really, nutrition and lifestyle are the foundations. Supplements are amazing when used appropriately in conjunction with nutrition and lifestyle.
And I love that Abby just made that point, about the kind of functional medicine space, sometimes using and abusing the supplements. And Abby and I talk about this a lot. It's so frustrating because we, we know how powerful a functional medicine root cause approach is for helping people heal their gut and hormone issues. And we will often have clients come to work with us that, have spent a lot of time, a lot of money working with functional medicine providers. And, they're taking 20 different supplements. They're not getting any better, or maybe they're only getting mildly better. And then we dive in and we find out they're not eating enough. They're not getting sunlight. They're, not having the daily bowel movements. They're not sleeping, all the basics. So I just love that you bring that up, because I think there is such a spectrum, just like with conventional medicine, where maybe prescription medications are overly, relied on, and same thing in the functional medicine world. And it's something that we definitely get frustrated about, because, it's just, you can't out supplement a poor diet and lifestyle.
Hear you. All right. So we've covered a lot today. So to summarize kind of our main points of our first podcast episode ever, squeaks, all the squeaks. We want to be making sure that you're nourishing your body and you're eating enough. So important. Want to be creating awareness around your mindset and starting to actively make shifts towards a more supportive mindset, aka finding your Coco or Momo love. The importance / the obsession with natural light exposure to aid in strengthening our circadian rhythm. Ensuring that you're having a daily bowel movement every day. And the reminder that supplements are a supplement to your foundations of nutrition and lifestyle. Helpful at that, but not stand alone. And that we're going to come back to all of these topics and dive into them in so much more depth in future episodes. So stay with us.
Stay with us. Woo!
Woo!